It was a unit responsible for chemical and biological research.
The first thing I see when I arrive inside the museum is a bunch of Chinese military officers. Cholera, plague, anthrax, tetanus, they were infecting people with all these different bacteria. Here there's a list. This experiment was insane, the frostbite testing, and then drop a bomb right in the middle of all those prisoners.
Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Out of Your Comfort Zone. My name is Rodrigo and we are here in Harbin, the main Chinese city in the north part of China, more northeast. The area that was previously known as Manchuria, that was occupied by the Japanese during the Sino-Japanese War and throughout the Second World War. And we are here, which today is a museum, but used to be one of the main headquarters of the Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army. If you never heard about it, the Unit 731, Google first, take a look at Wikipedia first, and you're gonna understand that this unit is one of the most terrible military units that ever existed in human history. It was a unit responsible for chemical and biological research with the goal of finding and producing biological and chemical weapons. So you can research online of a lot of the tests that they've done here at Unit 731. I don't need to put it here in the video right now because they're just horrendous. But what we want to do today, I'm not specialized in the Unit 731 or the Manchurian occupation and everything, but what we're going to do is explore together the museum here, because the Chinese, didn't forget. They didn't forget the crimes committed by the Unit 731 against the Chinese citizens here when this area was occupied. Chinese citizens, but also Koreans, Russians, and any other prisoners of war that were captured by the Japanese. So let's explore together. Again, people know about a lot of the Nazi crimes and experiments committed against humans, live human beings, prisoners of war, and so on. Unit 731 is worse, believe me. Research, read a little bit before it, watch the video, or you can come with me and explore together. It's terrible. As the video goes by, here in the museum, I'm going to tell a little bit of these experiments. So let's go inside. But before I go back to the video, I'm going to ask you a favor. If you haven't done yet, please like and subscribe to the channel. It's still a new channel, so every like and every subscribe really helps the channel grow. And that's it. Let's get back to it. Então aqui literalmente é onde ficava a base, principal unidade da unidade 731. Então fala aqui onde eles guardavam bactéria, onde guardavam produtos químicos, gás letal, tuberculose, tudo que eles tinham realmente aqui mostravam. Isso não é um museu criado do nada. Aqui ficava a unidade 731 e tudo que eles faziam aqui, as celas onde eles guardavam produtos químicos, biológicos, vírus e tudo mais.
The first thing I see when I arrive inside the museum is a bunch of Chinese military officers. Pretty interesting.
Então, já vou começar aqui. Primeiro tinha um monte de militar ali, tá tendo alguma apresentação. Eles têm um audio guide que você pode de graça. Esse é o meu passaporte. Aqui, bom, aqui tudo precisa de passaporte. E que você pode explorar aqui. Tá tendo algum evento, então. Aqui existem alguns filmes, vão sair agora 2025. 31 de julho de 2035. São filmes chineses, mas se forem ao menos próximo da verdade, o que aconteceu aqui, vai ser pesado. Nossa, realmente... então o nome do filme é 731.
The museum starts by explaining how the war started, how the Japanese invade China and the Manchuria region, which went against the Geneva Protocol at the time, when they started already doing experiments with live prisoners of war. And to make it clear that the goal of this museum is to show the atrocities committed by the Japanese and to keep as a memory that the Chinese didn't forget what happened to them during that time. The procedure by showing a little bit about the history of the Unit 731, who were its main leaders, where were the bases in China, remembering that in Harbin was the main headquarters of the unit, but they give a good overview of the unit itself. They also talk about the biological and chemical or warfare experiments and research done by the Japanese Imperial Army during that time. And because it started before the invasion of Manchuria, before the creation of the Unit 731. And this building was exactly the Unit 731 headquarters, and it's what is the museum today. So we are exactly visiting what it used to be, the Unit 731 headquarters. It was a pretty big museum, and they even had inside a mock-up, a model of what the base was at the time of the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Harbin and the Manchurian region in general in China is one of the coldest parts of China, with some ski resorts they call the Chinese Alps. So the uniforms of the unit was catered to the cold weather, but at the same time they could do a lot of cold experiments with the prisoners of war, freezing experiments, and we're going to show a little bit some of the pictures and how it was performed. Since they performed experiments in live subjects, it was on their interest to keep those subjects healthy and alive, obviously. So there were like a hospital inside the unit as well. And as you can see, they did human experimentation, not just with Chinese people, but also Soviets and North Koreans, doing all kinds of biological, chemical, and frostbite experiments with them. What's crazy is that they test all kinds of bacteria in live human beings, like typhoid, dysentery, cholera, plague, anthrax, tetanus. They were infecting people with all these different bacteria. Here there's a list to see what the reaction would be. So they could use the same bacteria if they were effective. They could use in war against their enemies. So the Japanese was one of the first nations to experiment, test weapons for biological and chemical warfare. They were at the time more advanced than the United States and the Soviet Union. The Japanese also performed vivisection without anesthesia. Essentially, prisoners of war were dissected alive to study disease progression and organs functions without anesthesia, which is pretty brutal. Some were infected with pathogens before dissection to observe the effects of the spread of those pathogens. They would also perform weapons testing on civilians and prisoners of war. So the victims were subjected to grenades and flamethrowers at close range, so you can see how the body reacts, bayonet stabbing, and chemical weapons, essentially exploding bombs with mustard gas and phosgene close to the bodies. Interesting enough, some of the material presented in the museum were copies of the original documents that are still today in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., U.S. Capitol. This is a model of an experiment they would perform where they would crucify a lot of the prisoners and civilians, and then in the middle of a field, and then drop a bomb right in the middle of all those prisoners to see how they would react. And these bombs had bacteria on them. But since the goal wasn't to kill the prisoners, the goal was to actually test how a weapon carrying bacteria would affect enemy troops. they would put some kind of armor around the prisoners, so the prisoners would only be affected by the bacteria, the disease, and not by the bomb itself. And based on the witness of some younger officers at the time, they could produce reenactments to understand how the test was performed. This experiment was insane, the frostbite testing. Victims were exposed to extreme cold to study frostbite. Limbs were frozen, then thawed to test treatment, often leading to gangrene and amputation. So the Japanese army could better protect their soldiers during cold weather and know what kind of treatment would work to help the soldiers during cold weather. During the Second World War, the Japanese sent balloons with explosives, high-altitude balloons, all the way to the United States across the Pacific Ocean. But their end goal was to fill these balloons with plague and other bacteria, disease, all the way to the United States, explode above highly dense populated areas in the United States to infect a great part of the population. They never got to this point, but they did send balloons with explosives. Other horrible experiments the Japanese performed in human guinea pigs was pressure chamber experiments, where prisoners were placed in high-pressure chambers until their eyes and organs burst, but also in decompression vacuum experiments, where subjects were locked in low-pressure chambers to simulate high-altitude conditions, leading to organ rupture and death. With the Japanese defeat at the end of the Second World War, the Unit 731 was closed and disbanded. Essentially, all the main perpetrators and leaders of the Unit 731 were able to escape. And they escaped to Japan, back to Japan, and even when Japan was occupied by American forces, essentially nothing happened to the scientists, to these officers, because the United States was interested in their research, the results of their chemical and biological warfare experiments. As you can see here, members of the Unit 731, they escaped from Manchuria through North Korea, South Korea, and then to Japan. The Americans did investigate the Unit 731, but essentially none of its main perpetrators were brought to justice, contrary to what happened to the Nazi leaders. The museum has also a souvenir shop, which is kind of weird to have a souvenir shop related to something so terrible like that, but I'm recording over my voice because I was speaking Portuguese there. But it also showed the name of the victims in the walls here, and you can walk to other areas of the headquarters of the Unit 731 that is still stand up. The building is still there, and you can still see a lot of the material, the actual material they used for their human experiments inside the Unit 731. They recorded a lot of those things, so there's a lot of archives, films, and photography archives of what happened. And even you saw at the start that movie, Unit 731, they used some of this material to produce the movie or to use as props for the actors to make the movie more realistic. It's a pretty big museum, so if you're interested in the history of that unit, you can spend a good 2-3 hours reading everything they have. E aqui onde eles guardavam muito tanto dos prisioneiros de guerra, tinham os produtos químicos, vírus, animais com doenças, tudo era aqui. Nesse lugar aqui eu tô quase no final da linha de uma das linhas de metrô de Harbin. Eu tô ficando em Harbin, bem no centro. E aqui dá pra você chegar de metrô e depois andar 10 minutos. Laboratório com bactéria. Ficava ali. E essa é a linha de trem construída pelos japoneses durante a ocupação dessa região, que era Manchúria na época, que usava para transporte de carga, prisioneiros, armamento,
tudo mais durante a ocupação pelos japoneses. E as 3 torres ali é o museu, simbolizam as torres, as fornaças que eles incineravam depois que todo mundo estava morto, depois dos testes e tudo mais. Eles incineravam todos os corpos para não deixar nenhuma evidência das atrocidades cometidas. Complicou, não tá em inglês, em português ou em inglês. Aqui era um laboratório de gás, quando eles testavam diferentes gases venenosos contra a população. Era por aqui. E aqui mais bunkers, onde eles guardavam também produtos químicos e biológicos venenosos. Era um ambiente subterrâneo para guardar gás letal. Aqui. De novo Google Translate, aí funciona. Senão tá tudo em mandarim chinês. E mais partes da antigo QG da unidade 731. I'm gonna record the conclusion walking towards the subway station because I'm a little bit late, because I had to go back to my hostel in Harbin, the city center, and then go to the airport. So I have to multitask. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy, like, thought it was interesting, learn about the unit 731. One of the most terrible things that happened in the last 200 years around the world, and very few people know about this unit. And it's, I would say, the saddest part of the story is, like, essentially almost nothing happened to the perpetrators of those terrible atrocities against live human beings. Because now I'm flying back to Southeast Asia. Wow, got like some stuff in my nose. And speaking of Southeast Asia, I've been traveling around Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and so I've been recording a lot of videos about the Vietnam War, the American secret war bombing both Laos and Vietnam to cut the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the killing fields in Cambodia, the regime of Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, another person that committed atrocities and got away with that. So I'm gonna be publishing a lot of videos about things you can visit in Southeast Asia related to the Vietnam War, to the killing fields, to the U.S. secret war. I'm gonna be showing you, like, in person, places you can visit related to that. Very interesting things. Old Viet Cong tunnels, the old American military base of Khe Sanh that was surrounded and almost destroyed by the Viet Cong. Places with a lot of unexploded ordnance from the secret war, especially in Laos, and the killing fields where you can see still the skulls and bones of people who were mass murdered by the Khmer Rouge regime. So to take a look at those videos, just check it out, the playlists on my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And if you like this video, please push the like button, because it really helps. We are still a small channel, so every like and every subscribe really helps the channel grow. Till the next time.